Moving on, Mr. Rare, you're up again. Finance Report, Part 2.
Thank you. In previous board meetings, we've discussed the possibility of revising Board Policy C local to exclude TRS on behalf expenditures in addition to recapture when calculating the fund balance target. Payments made by the state to TRS on behalf of a school district must be recorded as equal revenue and expenditures. So it's not a true expenditure of the district when we're looking at spendable funds. And so the revised CE local policy to exclude TRS on behalf expenditures and the fund balance target would be brought back to the board at the June 10th meeting. And the proposed changes, it represents a component of our annual budget planning as we look at what our fund balance is. And so we'll continue to review that each year.
Any questions? All right, moving on. Fiscal year budget projection update. Did you find the tree?
Okay, yes. All right, so tonight we'll take a look at the fiscal year 24 budget and specifically the updated projections for revenue, expenditures, and fund balance. So when we look at our local revenue, these projections for both expenditures and revenues are updated through the end of May. For our actuals updated through May. And so, as a reminder, we talked about tax collections at a previous meeting, how legislative changes that took place after the budget was adopted has led to our projected tax collections to be much lower than what was budgeted. You'll see on the next slide there will be a little bit of an offset on additional state funding to make up a portion of that. The interest earnings is probably the second biggest difference for local revenue. Due to the high interest rates, we've actually received much better revenue than what was projected. So the budget included $7.4 million, and right now we're projecting to be a little over $15 million for interest income. And so overall, looking at total local revenue, we'd be down about $19.5 million from what was in the budget. On the state revenue side, as I mentioned, with lower property tax collections, we will receive a little bit of additional state funding, and so right now we're projecting about $11.1 million in foundation school program above what was included in the budget. And then on the federal revenue side, the biggest adjustment is in the school health related services, and that's due to a change in the calculation on what could be included as far as billable services for our Medicaid eligible students. So at this point, we're anticipating a pretty significant reduction in that revenue account. And so overall, for the operating revenue, the adopted budget was $558.3 million. We're currently projecting $546.2 million, so a difference of $12 million, which is about 2% of our adopted budget. On the expenditure side, thankfully, since our revenue is coming in less than what we projected, the expenditures are also coming in less than what was budgeted. And so you'll see pretty much every single category that we have, we're currently projecting to have some savings in our budget. So overall, we budgeted $573 million. We're currently projecting $556 million, so a savings of $17 million on the expenditure side, which is about 3% of our budget. And so to true up our expected revenue and expenditures for the year, we will be bringing a budget amendment at the next meeting for approval. And so what you'll see here is that's a decrease in local revenue of $20 million to account for the reduced property tax collections, increase in state revenue by $10 million, reduction in federal revenue by $3 million. So overall, there'll be a net decrease to our budget of $13 million on the revenue side. And then on the expenditure side, we're looking to decrease the budget by just about $8.3 million, and that's due to the reductions that have been made in department budgets for the remainder of the year. We were able to pull that amount back out of budgets, and so we're going to be able to reduce our expenditure budget by almost $8.3 million. And so that gives us our general operating deficit. The adopted budget included a deficit of $14.9 million. Currently for June, we're projecting a deficit of about $9.8 million. But then that's before we've had the district budget reductions, and so that's almost $8.3 million. And we're currently looking to reclassify some of our capital expenditures to using the proceeds from our land sale to offset that of about $1.5 million. And so that would leave us with a projected deficit of just under $20,000. So I do want to highlight that's still our June projection, so we'll continue to work on those numbers through the remaining months, but that's where we are right now. And then the next slide is taking a look at our fund balance projection if we were to end up with that small deficit. So our fund balance, our goal, and this is using the revised policy, subtracting out recapture and then the TRS on behalf. And so our goal would be $128.6 million, and that would put our fund balance projected at this time at $132.5 million. So we would be above our target. So remaining steps for this year would be to close out fiscal year expenses, trying to minimize the amount of purchases that roll over from one year to the next. We would also be looking to finalize our revenue projections over the next few months as we get our final student counts for the year. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Ms. Taylor?
So when I saw the projected deficit, my first response was, wow. And I think we've talked about it almost ad nauseum. When you have a budget deficit, you only have two options: to increase revenue, which we know did not happen from our partners, and the other side is to cut expenses. And so it's not lost on me how hard you have worked, Dr. Rapp and your team, to reduce expenses $8.2 million. That is a lot. That's significant to get us almost to a break-even point. And so I just wanted to applaud your efforts for that. I know whatever was cut likely will be painful in other areas as we move forward, but just wanted to call that out and just, again, say kudos to your team.
Dr. Barker?
Thank you, Madam President. To piggyback off of what my colleague mentioned, I want to make sure that people hear that these are not fluff cuts. This is not just money that was laying around somewhere that we decided, oh, we don't need that. You just heard about the lack of technology staff that we now have, that we have to bring in some additional support to be able to manage the technology that we're bringing in that is necessary for our students to learn. There are positions that are not being filled through attrition that create gaps in support. That doesn't mean that we're not going to be supporting teachers and making sure that every student gets the best education possible. It's just we had to really tighten the belt. And as Ms. Taylor mentioned, we are very appreciative of that tightening of the belt, because that is a miraculous number to get it to 19,000, not million, 19,000. Miraculous. But that meant some very difficult conversations and some shuffling of some staff and some adjustments of some roles and responsibilities. And so I want everyone, all of our stakeholders, to hear that. It's remarkable that we have had to make these cuts in a year when our state has a surplus of money and there's $6 billion sitting for public schools in Austin. I'll stop there.
Ms. Alcatab?
I just want to chime in as well and just let you know that I'm very, very, very appreciative of you and your staff and Dr. Rapp and everybody because, as Dr. Barker said, you guys did really, really have to tighten that belt in order to make this happen. And it is unfortunate that we were in that situation, but for you to come up and bring it down to a $19,000 deficit is miraculous and very, very appreciative. And, unfortunately, we're in the situation that we are, that we don't have additional revenue coming in. We don't. And so you guys have had to make those hard decisions and, due to attrition, possibly lose. And for you guys to do this is miraculous. Thank you.
Dr. Bonner.
Mr. Rare, let's see, last month we got within 0.5% of the overall budget. This month we've got it down to the price about of a Toyota Corolla. Gosh, what you going to do next month? That's all I want to see.
The one thing that I'm going to say is that the state promised to make us whole with the additional $100,000 tax credit, homestead exemption. And by my calculations, they're $14 million short. So I would say if we had that $14 million, I personally know how I would be voting to spend it. But the state shorted us $14 million. I appreciate the work to get it down, but I will tell you once again, the state has come up short, and they came up short $14 million for the promises that they made to districts across the state. To Dr. Barker's point, the money sits in Austin. It does not sit in classrooms where it is needed by the students across the state of Texas. And on that happy note, we'll move on to the June 10th board meeting consent agenda preview.
Okay, thank you. Another very busy month in procurement. There are a lot of purchases going on as we begin, work on the summer projects. I just wanted to kind of highlight a few of these, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. The first one is to consider approval of band uniform replacement for Hebron High School. This is approximately 400 band uniforms, and it's part of an 8-year uniform replacement cycle. So these were last replaced back in 2015-16. We have campus refrigerated milk coolers. It's 102 milk coolers as part of the Child Nutrition Spend Down Plan approved by TDA. Then we also have the renewal of the Rover program at the elementary schools. This renewal provides increased safety and security measures at the district's elementary schools that do not have a school resource officer. And then the student athletic UIL accident insurance policy, it provides coverage for students involved in UIL-sponsored events. In addition, all students on day field trips are also included in this policy. And that's highlighting quickly the many different purchases that we have this month.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much.